listening to the DFO Rundown podcast with Frank Saravalli and Jason Gregor on dailyfaceoff.com.
Welcome to episode 7 of the DFO Rundown podcast. Hope you're having an awesome day. I'm Jason Gregor. Frank Saravalli joining us once again from Philly. Frank, how are you?
What's up, Jay?
You know what? True story. I know we like to record early in the morning. It's like 7:45 our time. I was already out shoveling, Frank. My analness about my shoveling continues. I want to make sure that my wife doesn't drive over snow when she takes the little guy to school. So I had to get up early and make sure all the shoveling was done.
Yeah. So like you don't drive over the snow because then you can't shovel it, right?
Yeah, well, you can. It's just way hard. You got to scrape it. And so I'm just, yeah. Plus I have this weird competition that no one else is involved in. I just like to always be the first on my neighborhood to have the sidewalk shovel.
Oh, you're that guy, huh?
Yeah, I just like it. I just think it looks good. Like I have exposed aggregate, which I would never recommend. The builder said that when we started, we needed it, but half my neighbors don't have it. So it just pisses me off because when you shovel, it just leaves it kind of catches the snow. So a lot of times I have to sweep it afterwards, like brutal.
Jason Gregor, the anal shoveler.
Yeah, it's true. It might be the only thing that I'm really that anal about. And it's funny because my wife's like, you don't care about anything else. I'm like, oh, trust me, I don't like to have the snow. So my son, actually, he's 7 and usually he's out there shoveling with me.
That's nice at least, but like still, you're that guy that like needs to show everyone that you're first.
Yeah. Well, that's just for me. I created, well, the true story was at my first house when we were married, my neighbor was an old retired Croatian guy. He was awesome. But he would get up in the morning and he would shovel mine. And like, he was in his 70s. And so I'm like, I can't have a 7-year-old guy shoveling. Like, I just felt guilty. So then I just kind of got into a routine of getting up early and shoveling mine and then doing some of his, just because I didn't want him to shovel my walks. I'm like, this guy's a grandpa, he's 70. Mirko was his name. He's a beauty. The only thing I didn't like about him was he used to have this Croatian drink. And like, he'd hey, come over and have a drink. And dude, it was just like drinking gasoline fire. And he could drink it just like, as water. And I'm just like trying to choke it down. Like, it was the worst when you'd come out after work and I'd walk out and he'd be in his backyard. He'd be like, Jason, come over. And I'm like, and I didn't want to say no. So I'd go over there and chug down one of his drinks. And it wasn't like a 1-ounce shot, man. It was like a 3-ounce, or like those old school guys, they can drink.
See, before you even said that, I was thinking to myself, I wonder if this Croatian man had a drink. Like, you shovel your driveway and then be like, come over for some vodka. Yeah. But like, I just assumed that was the case. And now it's amazing that that's true.
Yeah. I never knew what it was. He would pronounce it and I couldn't really understand. It was like a dark kind of brownish orange drink. And like, if you sipped it, it was okay. But like, he'd be crushing his in like 2 sips and I'd be just milking it.
That sounds terrible.
Yeah. So, but you know what? Hey, it was good memories. It got me into the habit now. So now I'm just kind of like, when it snows, I like to get out early and shovel.
See, I always just assume this about Canadians and places that get massive amounts of snow. Like in Philly, we'll get 3 or 4, small, usually short or small snows a year. I just assumed you guys just were like, screw it. Snowed again. No chance. I'm shoveling. I'm just driving on it.
Well, you have, after a snowfall, at least in Edmonton anyway, you have St. Albert, you have 24 hours to clean your walks, because if someone is walking on your sidewalk, the public property part of it, and in front of your house, and let's say they slip and bite it on the ice, technically they could sue you.
I get that, but I'm saying not the sidewalk, just the driveway. Like, at what point are you just like, screw it, this is too much and I'm never digging out? Like, there has to be somewhere in the country where they don't bother shoveling.
Well, I would guess that's in the East Coast, man, like in Halifax and the Maritimes, like in Boston, similar in that area, just up above in Canada, they get snow like anything I've ever seen. Like they'll get snow where your snow drifts are like 10 feet high. You can barely shovel it to get it out. So I would imagine in those places, yeah, I don't know. But here in Edmonton, like last year we had a lot of snow, but it's usually like 2 or 3 inches at a time. So it's never that much. Like, to me, you'd be the ultimate lazy person if you don't shovel your sidewalk. Like, I don't know if there's the odd person when there's skiffs of snow that won't do it. But anytime there's 3 inches, eventually, I don't know if you're just guilted into it, but I don't know if I've ever seen anybody go an extended period of time and not shovel their pad.
So do you think Ryan Rishaug is a shoveler, or do you think he makes his kids do it?
Oh, Well, his boys are what, 18 and 16 now. So he'll feign a back injury because he claims he has a back injury from sitting in the press box so long. So I think there's I would bet his wife Randine probably does more shoveling than Rashog.
I give Ryan like a 5, like 1 out of every 20 snowstorms Ryan shovels, I bet.
Oh yeah. That's probably fair. Yeah. Like I'm training my son. So hopefully when he's a teenager, he'll just do it. Like that's my goal. So.
He's 7 now. I mean, he's got to be like 4 years away from just doing the whole thing.
Oh, well, he's out there. Like he's graduated. He used to have a little kid shovel. Now I've got him on a mid-size one. I cut it off. So he likes it better, but he usually only shovels for about 3 minutes and then he's playing in the snow, but that's okay.
I love
baby steps.
Child labor.
Yeah, baby steps. So baby steps, one team that's not taking baby steps right now, man. Basically they're soiling the sheets. If there was a diaper, they'd be soiling it every night. The Buffalo Sabres, man, they are in trouble. Like they can't score 5-on-5. They're giving up goals very easily. They don't have good goaltending. Like this was supposed to be an improvement year for them, and it's gone completely backwards.
Yeah, look, I don't think anyone was under the impression, Jason, that they'd be in the playoff mix, not in that division with how ridiculously difficult it is, but just be competitive. Like, I think there's so many different things to sort out. Ralph Kruger, roster construction, Taylor Hall, Jack Eichel, Jeff Skinner. Like, I don't even know where to begin. I mean, so let's start with Sunday. Before the game, Ralph Kruger is talking about, we need our players to give it all, leave it all on the ice. And here we are. I know that doesn't happen in the game, but the Sabres are down 3-0 for the bulk of the third period. Not even a hint of pulling the goalie. Like, is the coach all in this situation? Is he giving it his all? Like, there wasn't even a hint of it. Jonas Johansson never even motioned towards the bench. They never looked like they even looked in his direction, as if Buffalo was just waving the white flag. And I think the flag that everyone around the NHL is waving today is thank God we're not Buffalo. Like that's how bad it is. And there's so many different layers to it. Does the coach want to be there? Will the GM be in charge after this season? Will Jack Eichel want to remain there? Is Taylor Hall going to resign there? Will Jeff Skinner ever score a goal again? Like the list, honestly, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, the Skinner contract, the moment it was signed, and that's not Kevin Adams, he didn't sign it, but I remember when that was signed, I was like, what are they doing? Like, he's never scored 70 points and you're giving a guy $9 million. Like that was when you start, desperation usually just leads to, problems that you think will solve themselves usually never solve themselves. And they're in a tough spot, big tough spot. And we look at Ralph Kruger. He's coached now. This will be his third NHL season. He's won 40% of the games that he's coached out of the 136 being behind the bench. He has 1 year left on his contract. I'd be surprised if they let him go now, just because, now you're paying for 2 coaches during a pandemic. I'm not sure that's ideal, but I'm more curious about Kevin Adams, the GM, who didn't have an abundance of experience. He has some, sure. Like we have Billy Guerin coming up later today on the pod, and look at how many years he spent kind of working his way up the chain. And he's got experienced guys beside him, like Kevin Adams. And maybe I don't know if that was ownership, but are you surprised that there's not a lot of like other experienced guys in management in Buffalo that he can lean on?
Yeah, I don't really understand the pecking order in the front office. Like, after Kevin Adams, then who? It's thin. They got rid of their 2 assistant GMs when they cleaned house with Jason Botterill. And yeah, it seemed promising for Kevin Adams to start. Like he lures Taylor Hall there and you're thinking like, okay, like maybe this is a step in the right direction. Team seems to, they brought in a few veteran pieces around him. Maybe they're going to take a step forward here, and there's just something that reeks there. And I don't know what it is. And, just going back to Ralph, like I think a lot of people are wondering, does he even want to continue working? Does he want to remain coach of the Buffalo Sabres? I go back to the Skinner situation. Like, why isn't he playing with Jack Eichel? If you go back to when he had his 40-goal season, Jeff Skinner, I did a little research. He had 14 even strength goals. And that was more than Scheifele, Stone, Barkov, Tavares, Bergeron, and Svechnikov. And so Olofsson has played a ton of games with Jack Eichel, and he's got 5 even strength goals. Amazing shot. He's a power play shooter, but 5 to 14, he's just not as good as Jack Eichel. So, to this point, Jeff Skinner hasn't put him with Jack. Like, what's going on? Like, why not take that step and see what happens? And it just seems to be a lot of resistance to that. And you wonder, I get the accountability part, and Ralph Kruger's been around a long time, so I'm not second guessing that. But to have him as a healthy scratch for 3 games, like, at what point could you make the argument that leaving your $9 million asset in the press box is helping your team? Like, I don't get it.
Yeah, coach has to send a message. And I understand that one, but you do question it. Like, the number one aspect of coaching is put players in positions to succeed. So Jeff Skinner, well, we all can agree he's overpaid. It's not the player's fault or the coach, because if anybody was willing to want to overpay me, I'd gladly take it. I don't know anybody who says, no, don't pay me that much. I don't want it. Everybody will take the money. So, but you look at it and say, okay, well, we have Jeff Skinner, and we can fight against it, or we can at least give the opportunity. Now, I watched a few Buffalo games, and I wouldn't say that Skinner was necessarily, putting forth the best effort. So maybe that's part of it. But at some point you look and say, okay, if Olofsson wants to play with him, well, then lots of wingers can play their off wing. You can find another option, or, play him with Taylor Hall. But if you look at who he's played with this year, he's not playing with guys that you're going to score with regularly. So part of coaching is putting your guys in the best position to succeed, even if you're not loving every aspect about their game, because it's not like Buffalo right now has better options. They've scored 19 goals at 5-on-5, Frank. Like, Washington leads the NHL with 51 at 5-on-5. Like, they're not even shooting BBs right now at 5. Like, they're bringing a BB gun, to an M16 fight and thinking they got a chance.
Jeff Skinner, 0 goals. Like, you think one would go in off of his ass by accident. Like, how does that not happen? And then Taylor Hall, like, what do you do with Taylor Hall? I get that he likes it there and may have interest in re-signing. He hasn't scored since the opening 10 minutes of the season. So how could you possibly make the argument, if you're Kevin Adams, and we have our first TSN trade bait board of the season coming out later this Monday, that it makes sense to keep Taylor Hall? Like, even if he loves it there, re-sign him in July and send him and recoup some assets. And at this point, what are you getting for Taylor Hall given the $8 million cap hit?
Yeah, that's a tough one for sure. Like, you look at Jeff Skinner now leads the NHL with most shots on goal without a goal after Giuseppe scored in Rangers. And guess what, Frank? It went in off his butt. True story on Saturday. That's how he got his first. So, Taylor Hall, you look at shooting percentage for guys who usually score, and, Hall's chipping in some assists at least, but can't score to save his life right now. He's over 50 shots and he's only got 1 goal. Like, eventually the odds are, when you follow shooting percentage and stuff, eventually it'll change, but you don't know when. And the thing is, now that you're right, they're going to trade Hall, and the team that acquires him is probably not going to have to give up nearly as much as if Hall was playing well and the Sabres were still losing. So now it's almost like a double whammy, and Buffalo's probably going to have to retain half the salary just to make a trade work in a tight cap situation. And they're kind of chasing their tail, right? You throw in Ristolainen, who's got post-COVID symptoms, which is very scary for some young players. We've seen a few professional athletes show us just how dangerous this can be long-term. And I don't really see how it turns around in Buffalo, but what has to happen is, and if you're hearing that there's any remote chance that Kruger doesn't want to be there, then you got to get rid of him, because they have to play the remainder of this season to try to get some benefits to next year, right? To at least get guys playing well, feeling good about themselves, because losing is just like winning. It's infectious. And once it gets in your organization, man, it can take decades to get out.
And it seems like it's just been in that organization since Tim Murray and the Sabres began tanking. They've never been able to get out of it.
And you know what? Well, what we see Buffalo on the complete reversal side, Frank, a few weeks ago, we were like, hey, you know what? Chicago, they'll come back to earth. They're not coming back to earth. They're just getting better. And Patrick Kane scores his 400th goal, becomes the 100th player in NHL history to do that. He's definitely going to get to 500, I would think, at this point in his career. He's now second in the NHL after a 4-point night last night in points. Like, he's right in that conversation for the Hart for sure. And, Chicago just keeps rolling. Like, there's a young coach in Jeremy Colleton who's got all his guys buying in. And I'll give their European scouts a lot of credit because they go find guys. Dominic Kubalik comes out of nowhere. He's scoring goals. Now you got Suter coming out here, mid-age 20-year-old guy, Panarin beforehand. Like they know how to go find Europeans that can come and score who are in their mid-20s.
Yeah. How about Kurashev as well?
Yeah. Yeah, it's awesome.
And you mentioned Patrick Kane too, by the way. There's only 9 other US born players that have scored 400 NHL goals. One of them is going to be on our pod later in the episode, but I want to get to Frankly Speaking. And you mentioned Ristolainen, and all right, so here goes this week, Frankly Speaking. And it's all about the NHL and COVID. I got to tell you, frankly, I thought we were getting to the point 2 weeks ago, 17 days ago, that the season was going to be on pause. We had nearly 8% of the NHL's entire player population on the COVID-19 list. And here we are, March 1st, and there's just 4 players on today. I really thought that we were heading towards a pause, that it was going to be time for a few divisions to sit out. Maybe the North could keep going because they had so few cases, but it was running rampant. When you have 19 players on the New Jersey Devils and 15 on the Philadelphia Flyers and a number on the Buffalo Sabres, and then you start talking about staff, coaches, everyone connected to the team beginning to test positive for COVID-19, becomes a really dangerous situation. And now we're at a point where it seems like it's calmed down. And I think a lot of that has to do with the NHL's protocol. It's so easy to rip the league and to say that they don't know what they're doing. I've done a little homework in the last number of days, just learning more about their COVID-19 testing procedures and exactly how it works and the level of detail that goes into the testing procedure. When they're looking at specific strains, they can know what stage it's in just based on the swab. Is it strongly contagious? Is it weakly contagious? Is it just beginning? Is it towards the end of its potency? Those are the types of things that they're looking at in addition to the close contact testing. And it's kind of a window that I didn't realize the level of detail. And so now that they've added in this extra layer of the rapid testing, really kind of for the first time in this season, do I feel like we're in a comfortable position, not, knocking on wood, that we can actually get through this 56 game season, because I thought for a while that we were going to have to shorten it. Or again, like I said, we were heading towards a pause. So just wanted to give a little stick tap to the NHL for kind of persevering through this. Their only goal has been to make it through this season. It hasn't been about money. And I thought for a while like that was in jeopardy. And there's been a few hiccups along the way. But, Jason, the other thing I wonder about is, at what point do we get to kind of herd immunity among the NHL population, where so many guys on the Flyers have had it, this number of the Sabres, the Devils, that it won't, the Columbus Blue Jackets, who seem to, a lot of them have had it in the offseason. At what point do we get to the point where a lot of players on the team have had it and that team is no longer susceptible?
Yeah, I'm no scientist. I don't know. I've read up on herd immunity, and they say in the grand scheme of the population, it'll take a long time. But in your point, to a smaller group, maybe that's better. And I give the players a lot of credit because, when you're young and you're living the NHL lifestyle and you're used to it, right? Like you go out for dinners and there's a lot of team camaraderie and you go have fun, and obviously there's not a lot of that to do right now. They're very strict, and you're on the road. You're basically in the hotel. You have limited restaurant choices that you get to go to, and that's it. And I think it can be tough, but I'll give the players a lot of credit, and the coaches, like they've done everything well. And it shows you that even when you do everything well, if one guy gets it, it can spread through a team pretty quickly. But outside of the New Jersey Buffalo, I don't think we have any cases of one team spreading it to another team potentially. So it's been a real positive, and I'm with you. I think they've done a great job of this. They're down to 4 players on it. And, Thomas Hertl was the one San Jose Shark, and that happened last Wednesday. He's now being quarantined. It doesn't look like it's impacted anybody else in that team. So you know what, maybe in 2 weeks, there'll be nobody, which is good, because the scary thing is you look at players like Ristolainen, you look at James Neal in Edmonton, he's playing games, but he's he's still feeling some of the after effects of this. So not only is it great they're playing games, I don't want any human being to get it, because the long-term implications here, when you have elite level athletes, like look at Marco Rossi, he had to leave the team, Frank, because he's got, symptoms with it that are that serious. Like that to me is the scary factor in all this, is the after effects of it.
And I think in some ways, oddly enough, it's been underreported. Like this is a 19-year-old top prospect who should be at the peak of his health and physical fitness, having to sit out for an entire year because there's symptoms that he can't continue. I don't know if it's cardiac related. That seems to be the buzz, but like, we don't know the full scope yet. And to see Ristolainen, to see, as you mentioned, James Neal, like these are top physically conditioned athletes. And to be in that position where it runs through your team and no one has any issues except for Ristolainen, like it's scary because you just don't know if, I'd say one guy is too many in the NHL population to be having long-term effects. And so, that's why you have to continue to take it seriously. And I think a lot of people have shrugged around the league saying, well, I'm not at risk. Well, here's why you are.
Yeah, 100%. And I know what, kudos to all them, and it should be good. And hopefully, we get through the playoffs and everything like that. And, we can talk about next season and the financial ramifications of this, because eventually there will be that factor. I'm hearing that, the PA technically under the salary structure, like by the end of it, they're going to have to pay back like some point 1.5 billion. I don't know how they're going to do that over time. So that'll be the interesting one, but that's a story for another pod, Frank. Let's get to our guest today. You mentioned him earlier, one of only 9 American players who have at least 400 goals. Billy Guerin is going to join us, Frank.
Let's do it. Let's get to Billy Guerin. Our next guest has his name on the Stanley Cup 4 times, twice as a player and twice as a front office member. He played more than 1,400 NHL games, including the playoffs. The pride of Wilbraham, Massachusetts, is one of a select few U.S.-born players to score 400 NHL goals. And after his playing career, he transitioned to management with the Pittsburgh Penguins, helping them to 2 Stanley Cups. And you know him now as the general manager of the Minnesota Wild. Welcome to the DFO Rundown, Bill Guerin.
Thanks, Frank. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
How strange of a world is this? You get to Vegas with your team. It's a Sunday night when we're recording this, and you, with the COVID and pandemic going on, you are stuck in your room talking to us. What's up with that?
Yeah, I think under normal circumstances, Frank, I'd probably be taking a rain check on this call. But it's like a ghost town. But it's pretty much every city that we've been to. It's definitely different times, but hopefully we'll get through it soon, and we'll be back to normal and full buildings and playing in front of energetic crowds and things like that. So we just have to be a little more patient.
Mm-hmm. So talk to me. You mentioned energetic, and when I hear that word and think of your team, I think of Kirill Kaprizov and the shot in the arm that he's given you guys. You can see his impact on the ice. You guys are on a bit of a tear at the moment. Can you give us some insight into what it's like having him join your team? I saw all your guys wearing shirts the other day. What's it been like having him around?
It's been great. He has given us a shot in the arm on the ice, but I think just as powerful, I think it's what he's done to our locker room. And he's such a happy guy, energetic guy. He's the only Russian guy on our team, and he's doing fine communicating with everybody. I think Matt Zuccarello has really taken him under his wing and really helped him out. And those two have seem to have become pretty close, and you can see it with the chemistry on the ice. And then you throw Victor Rask in the middle, who's having a comeback season. It's nice to see, but Kirill has definitely been a big part of what's gone on here recently.
You mentioned energy, Bill, and you were an energetic player when you played, and I'm sure at times you fed off the crowd. As a manager, when you're evaluating your team, how difficult is it to see them play games? It's hard to have that crowd that can sometimes change it after a hit, where normally a big hit would boost everybody, and now it's like crickets other than a few guys on the bench. Is it challenging as a GM to look to see how your players are in a season like this?
Well, you feel for the guys. I mean, one of the great things about being a professional athlete is to get the roar of the crowd. It's to, they're going to let you know how you're doing that night. And you can change a game with one hit or one goal. And, when you retire, that you miss that, so, with things the way they are, I feel fortunate for the guys that we get to play right now, but there is something missing, and that's the emotion of a full building and an energetic crowd. It really is something powerful.
Bill, since you've come in as general manager in Minnesota, you've really put your fingerprints all over the organization. You haven't been afraid to make moves. And I think that fits your personality. And maybe, I don't know if it has to do with Jim Rutherford, who you learned under a little bit because he was never afraid to make moves. But you see your team now, obviously you're one of the hottest teams in the league recently. What do you like about your team right now? Is this kind of the team that you envisioned when the season began?
Yeah, I mean, the guys are really playing well. And I think that the first part of your question is I like that they're a team, that they're playing as a team. Everybody's bought into Dean's, not just his systems, but his messaging and how we're going to be able to win. And I really like that. And I think the guys are, hey, look, we've won some games here recently, and that's fun. And you always want to be having fun when you're playing this game. And I think right now that they are. I learned a lot from Jim. I learned a lot from Ray Shiro. I've learned a lot from a bunch of people in this game, but I really just felt that I needed to make some moves in the off season. And I've said this before, there are good people going out and good people coming in. And it was just something that we needed to do was change the look of this team and get some new energy in here and get some new looks. And, we've been really happy with the guys who have come in here, and I think they've enjoyed playing in Minnesota.
You gained a lot of experience, Bill, as you mentioned, working under Ray and Jim, but a year and a half into your gig in Minnesota, what's one thing that you think has stood out to you that has maybe surprised you that's been a little bit different about being the guy steering the ship?
Well, I guess you can expect a lot of things, but I guess I didn't realize how many different directions you get pulled in on a daily basis, and that when you're an assistant GM or in player development, you have one department to worry about, and you do your job and you focus on that. But right now, I have to. You focus on every department, and you just get pulled in a lot of different directions. And even trying to help on the business side, when they need me and things like that, you're busy and you never really get it until you sit in this chair.
Do you like it?
I love it. Oh my, yeah, it's the best. I love it. It's the best job you could ask for. And with Craig Leopold as our owner, he's just. He's a great guy. He's passionate about the game, and he gives us all the resources to be successful. And we've got a great working environment here. Yeah, I love it. I mean, I'm a general manager in the National Hockey League. I absolutely love it every day.
Do you feel, Bill, that the trade deadline, especially if you go to Canadian teams, there's the quarantine factor. How different is the trade deadline, do you feel, is it going to be this year than compared to previous ones?
I've been asked that before, and you would think it'd be maybe a little slower. But then I think when it comes down to it, we're all very competitive. And if we feel, if teams feel they have a crack at it, they're going to do what they have to do. I think the U.S. to Canada or Canada to U.S. trades, that could be hit a little harder due to the quarantine. But you never know. Maybe teams look to do things a little bit earlier so they can get past that. But it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
We've seen a lot of new things this year, mainly the mini series, 2 games, some 3, sometimes even 4. And I guess the strange one, St. Louis, Arizona, 7. Yeah. But there's less travel involved when you do it this way. Do you think that this is something, whether it's 20, 30% of games in the future, could we see mini series just to cut down on the amount of travel?
I hope so. I've really enjoyed this, and I think for a number of different reasons, but I think most importantly, we'll not only cut back on travel, but we'll cut down on fatigue for the players. I think instead of just rushing out of by the time the game ends, it's 30 minutes later and we've got everybody on buses going to the airport. I mean, just think about that. That's a lot of stuff going on. You're rushing out, you're getting to your next city at 2, 3, and 4 in the morning, or you're getting home at 4 in the morning. It's a lot on the players. So I think it could help cut back on fatigue. It could help cut back on injury. And, I think travel wise too, you save a few bucks on the charter flights here and there. And I don't know if it'll be possible to do it like baseball does at 100%, but I think we can mix in a few. And I think for rivalries and for the fans, I think it could really create some great atmospheres.
Aside from the warm weather, what's it been like playing in the West? I know it's kind of more difficult on you guys because of where you're located travel wise, but someone had to do it, right?
Yeah, we're fine. I mean, we come out here, it's for a week, so we're not complaining. It's, we're in Vegas for 2 games, and then we're going to Arizona for 2 games. So there's not a ton of travel. It's just, today getting to Arizona or to Vegas, it was 2 hours and 45 minutes. But hey, nobody's feeling sorry for us. We travel on charter planes. We stay at great hotels. We're fed well. It's a pretty good existence. So, I think we're doing fine.
So taking you back to the trade deadline for a second, I know it's 6 weeks on Monday. Is there anything, it's insanely difficult right now to make any sort of move just with where teams are cap wise, and your team's on a little bit of a roll. But if you were looking at your team on a big board, is there anything that's on your wish list, something that you'd like to tackle?
Not right now. I think we're in a spot right now where we can be patient. All our guys are playing really well. Like you said, the team's rolling along pretty well. So, it's not broken right now. So we're not going to look to fix it just for the sake of making a trade. So, but like I've always said, no matter where we are, if we're winning or losing or what, if we have an opportunity to make our team better, we're going to do that.
Bill, learning as a GM, and I think the art of trading has to be something that can make or break. We see trades made where one team ends up really winning. Obviously, both teams want to have a good trade, but what have you learned even in the assistant role, but now as the GM, like how's your personality? Do you initiate the contact? Do you like them to come to you? How does it work? Like in that banter between GMs when you start the conversation to have a trade?
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me. I call guys and just check in with them. They call me and check in. I think that's something that I've learned is how everybody kind of keeps the lines of communication open. And I learned something very important from Jim Rutherford, and that was to try to make fair deals. Don't always try to win a trade, because then you won't have trade partners and you'll never pull the trigger on a trade. Just do something, try to do something, work through it together, work on something that works for both teams. And you're not going to, I'm not going to make, 100% successful trades. It's just not going to happen. And, I might look like I win some, it might look like I lose some, but I think in the end, if you work with the other general managers and try to make fair deals, you'll get a lot more done and you'll have a lot more trade partners.
How much does the expansion draft that's looming in this summer impact you? Because you're thinking about wanting to win and add, but then possibly about, well, what about the protection list? And how different do you think the overall league's approach is going to be compared to how it was in Vegas?
I think it could be a little different. I'm not really sure. And it's kind of tough in that situation to look into the future because I don't know what moves we're going to make until then. But I do know this, that we will lose a good player, and that's just a fact. I mean, every guy on our team has value, and we're going to lose somebody, and it'll be a big loss. But we'll just have to prepare for that and be ready to, I hate to say it, but you just have to move on and be ready to replace that player.
And following up on that one quick, Bill, the fact that, like, I don't know, you weren't there at the time, but you look back at what Minnesota and some other teams, Florida, the expansion draft, no one really knew, but some teams ended up paying a big price by trying to protect that one extra guy and ended up losing two good players. Is that something you feel it's better to just say, hey, we're going to lose one player. I'm not going to try to make it not the player I want and end up losing two players?
Yeah. That's kind of the way I'm thinking today. I don't know. Ask me in a couple months and I might think differently. But like I said, we are going to lose a good player. Regardless of what we try to do, it's going to be somebody that brings value to our team that is going to be gone. And, if we feel that we need to try to keep somebody and offer something, then maybe we'll do that. But as of right now, that we're just kind of comfortable with the fact that we're going to lose somebody.
Bill, I wanted to use this opportunity to pat myself on the back. Before the season, I had picked Dean Evason as the Jack Adams Award winner this year. It's a little early to be celebrating, but I just wanted to get your take on what's it been like working with Dean. I see him as this sort of straight ahead guy, no nonsense. What's been his secret sauce to get all the guys to buy into that message?
Well, I think Dean's a great communicator, and I think his time in the National Hockey League, allows him to be able to talk to the guys like a player. And I think that's very important. And I think one of the biggest, strengths of Dean is his openness and his willingness to do other things, to try to listen to everybody. We've got a very collaborative model here in Minnesota. We all sit in on meetings together, and everybody's got a voice. And Dean it's not his way or the highway. He listens to everybody, and and in the end, he'll make the decisions. But he's a very a very open guy, very guy that's a guy that's willing to bend. It's not just this is the way we're doing it. I'm not listening to anybody else. He'll listen to everybody and then make some decisions.
I've known you a little while. You're a pretty easy guy to get along with. You mentioned Dean and his experience as a player, talking to players. Has your communication with players changed at all? Does it have to change when you become a manager?
I don't think so. I talk to the guys all the time, and that's just my style. That's who I am as a person. If I feel that I have something to offer a player, I'll tell him. I always tell Dean what I've communicated to the player, so we're on the same page. But that's just me. I like talking to the guys. I like kind of seeing how they're feeling and getting to know them as people, seeing their personality, so I can help them in the long run.
Is it more important this year, Bill, because of such unique circumstances? I know when players go on the road, there's not a lot to do. Usually you go out for big team dinner and stuff, and that's not really happening. As a GM today, do you have to be more leery of the mental comfort of your players this season more than ever?
Yeah. You know what? You just want to make sure that they're okay. That they're not kind of going stir crazy. It's definitely a different world, but I think these guys are really doing their best to stay focused and to do the right things. Nobody's, sneaking out to restaurants or anything like that, or, doing what they're not supposed to be doing. And I give our players a lot of credit. And it's tough, but you know what? We're all biting the bullet and doing what we have to do. I think, especially in today's day and age, you have to have a good awareness of the mental health of all the people involved in your organization, not just the players, but the coaches as well. And this has been a tough year for the entire world. So we have to make sure that we've got our finger on the pulse of how everybody's feeling mentally.
And you mentioned earlier how, what Zoom calls, if you didn't have to do anymore, it'd be great. You like to have a face-to-face conversation. What about scouting? Like this year's very different. Usually you can go pick any game you'd want to go watch if you want to see another team. Is scouting when you don't get to see players live? How much of a challenge is that going to be this year in evaluating, not just for trades, but for even maybe potentially in free agency where you're not seeing as many players that you'd like to live?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely bringing its challenges, but I'm very confident in our pro staff and our amateur scouting staff. We're all in the same boat. All the NHL teams have, we're all in the same boat. Nobody's got a leg up on anybody else. We're all in the same situation. So it's an even playing field. And I'm just very confident in our staff. And, we have past records of all the players, amateur and pro. So we're not just starting fresh every year. We know these players. We do what we can with, live viewings, with video viewings, whatever we can do.
All right, Bill, we really appreciate your time. We're going to have Jason wrap things up here with some rapid fire.
We'd like to do a rapid fire, a few questions, Bill. Perfect. So just kind of off the cuff, have a little fun with it. While you're in Vegas, and obviously you're not getting to go out though, but what is your cocktail of choice to wind down either at the end of a night or after a victory?
Tito's Martini, straight up with a twist.
Ooh, okay. True or false? You and Doug Wade had matching suits at an Edmonton Oilers party.
I can't remember, but I'll say true.
Okay. One of your former teammates had texted me when we heard you were coming on, wanted me to ask you that one. When Bill Guerin entered the NHL, what was his wow, welcome to the NHL moment?
Oh boy. You know what? I think it was my first practice, and just realizing how big and strong all the guys were and how long of a road I had in front of me to really be a full-time player.
If you're a GM now and they were both on your team, but you can only have one, Scott Stevens or Scott Niedermayer?
Oh man, that's a terrible question. But Nieder's my old roomie, so I'll take Nieder.
Oh, well, it's good to, hey, when you got two Hall of Famers, it's you can't go wrong.
Yeah. And I used to ride to the rink with Scotty, and those were intense rides.
Well, in what way? What made it so intense?
He had his game face on when I'd pick him up. Like there was not a lot of discussion. He was ready to go already, and he was a pretty intense guy. Good. So
he was one of your most intense teammates. Who was the funniest teammate you played with?
Oh boy, I think Dougie. I think Dougie's one of the funniest guys I've ever been around. He's hilarious, and I think we just have the same sense of humor, so we're constantly laughing when we're around each other.
And if you were going to give anyone advice on the one thing you need to be a successful GM, what is it?
You have to learn every department. You have to know what's going on in every department before you get the job. It'll just help you.
Now you worked in a lot of different departments, so you need a lot of that experience. And I know you talked to Frank earlier how there were some things where you're just like, you're getting pulled in every direction. Was there one that was challenging for you where you were just like, wow, this is the toughest learning curve that I didn't expect in the job?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was the amateur scouting. And when you go to a game and every time I'd go to a game before, you just watch the game. But when you're going to watch specific players, just watching that guy on the ice for his entire shift, not focusing on the puck and where it's going in the play of the game, focusing on that one player and learning how to do that. And it's, it's an art. And, the guys that are out there every day doing this types of thing, they've perfected that, and it's not easy.
And lastly, what does Bill Guerin binge watch on Netflix?
Everything.
Favorite show?
Oh man, favorite show. I love Peaky Blinders.
Oh, buddy, they got the hat. I love
Peaky Blinders. I'm rewatching The Sopranos right now on HBO. But yeah, I just finished watching the F1 documentaries.
Okay.
And that's super impressive. I can't wait for year 3 to come out, or season 3 to come out. But yeah, I Game of Thrones. I was a big Game of Thrones guys. I've watched it twice, all the way through. I try to mix in a book every now and then too.
We all know that's a lie. Come on. Billy, you're the best. Thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Frank. Thanks both of you guys. Appreciate it.
And Billy Guerin, that was awesome, Frank. Loved his clarity, and I love that he gave the answer for this 2 Scots. It's always fun. Some guys will just, they don't want to offend anyone, but Bill answers it because there's really no wrong answer in that regard. But, as you mentioned earlier, how about a guy who gets to play with Scott Niedermayer and Scott Stevens as a young kid coming to New Jersey?
That was the best. It pains me to give you any credit, Jason, but that was the best question anyone's asked so far. And in our 7 episodes of the rapid fire, you could see like in his face when you asked him, he's like, oh no. But yeah, I mean, like think about how awesome that Devils team was in the mid 90s, and really just the ability to play with both those, like to have 2 Hall of Fame defensemen on the same back end is pretty wild.
Wow. You go back and you look at the Devils, and then you throw in Marty Brodeur, and like they had so many good players. They weren't maybe appreciated as much because at times they would definitely trap it up and could be boring for you. But they also had Bill Guerin was a 400 goal scorer in his career. Like Jason Arnott easily could have won the Conn Smythe the year they won it with him. You throw it, Claude Lemieux would come back, and that guy could score big goals for them. It's funny. My son's been playing NHL 94. I got this old school arcade game, and the New Jersey Devils in 95, like they're dominant. You've got like Stefan Richer, and Zella Pukin's like this crazy guy. I know it's only a video game, but I'm just like he's 7 years old and he legitimately beats me, and it pisses me off to no end because he takes the Devils and they're a really hard team to beat. Like Brodeur, like he can barely score in the guy. It's annoying.
Well, next time you got him out shoveling, you know what to do.
Oh, dude, trust me. I'll be Scott Stevenson in the snowbank. I love it. Well, Frank, that was a great pod. As always, we appreciate it. Enjoy the week. We'll have lots to discuss on Friday.
Sounds good. See ya.
Thanks for listening to the DFO Rundown with Saravalli and Gregor. Keep it locked on dailyfaceoff.com and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from to never miss an episode.